Peace, everyone. This is Jackie Lukman. How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining me today. It is 5:01 now on Friday. If it's 5 o'clock on Friday, it is darker than blue. And I am glad to be with you all. Today is there's a lot. There is so much to talk about. And we're gonna get into it. Not even gonna waste any time. So let's get to the big story, which you just heard. Um, a federal judge, excuse me, has extended the deadline for Trump's executive order that is basically a buyout or has been described as a buyout of federal employees. It's now being reported that up to 65,000 federal workers have taken the so-called buyout. They've already signed the paperwork and sent it in, allegedly. And there is some confusion about that, certainly because people are wondering if the deal is legal. First of all, people are wondering what is going on. Excuse me, paid from that deal, whether they will be able to receive compensation as promised through September, because a lot of people don't know that the current budget for the federal government expires in like March or something like that. So there's not even going to be guaranteed funds that people are going to receive, because if you don't know if what the budget is going to be past March, you don't know if you're going to have the money to pay. I mean, technically, we all know the federal government has plenty of money to do whatever it wants anytime it wants to, as it does all the time, as it is. Excuse me, I've got a little tickle in my throat. Excuse me. So a judge has temporarily blocked this order from going through. The deadline is has been moved to Monday instead of, I guess it was yesterday, which was the original deadline. So what the judge has said that this deadline is moved till Monday. The federal judge was in Massachusetts, pushed back the deadline for employees to accept the offer, which was initially set for 11:59 Thursday, but the judge has moved it to at least Monday, and we're not even sure if Monday is the drop dead. This is the deadline date. But he said at least Monday, and this is in response to a lawsuit that was filed by federal workers and their unions that argued that the administration could not guarantee pay beyond the March 14 budget expiration date. That's true. The February 5th buyout offer was extended to some staffers at the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, since we love our acronyms here in DC, who were initially exempt, multiple outlets reported. There were some agencies that were exempt. At first, the Department of Homeland Security was one of those agencies. Obviously, the military is exempt. And the U.S. Postal Service, which people don't realize is kind of, it's a sort of autonomous agency that operates separately from the U.S. government a little bit. And we're going to talk about the Postal Service just a tiny bit, a little bit, when we talk about what the federal workforce actually is, y'all. That the reason all of this is being done, the attacks on the federal workforce, the claims that we need to reduce the government by a significant amount of work. Yeah, that's not why they're doing this, but we're gonna get into that in a minute. Let me take my time, because it's been a crazy day for me. I've been doing some stuff here in the studio, setting up some stuff, improving some things to get some things done, and doing some work for a whole bunch of meetings that I have this weekend. So it's been crazy. So this is the first time I've had to sit down and just breathe. So let me just walk through my notes methodically so we stay on track. in February, on the 5th, when this was like a few days after this ridiculous thing was ordered, people, and we talked about this last week, I believe, on this show, and maybe the week before last, and people were like, "Oh my God, nobody's going to take that offer." Well, I told you that they would. I told you that people would take the offer, and don't be surprised if they do. And then people did take the offer, and people were surprised. And look, at first, it was reported that 20,000 people, 20,000 federal employees took Trump's offer. A few days later, earlier this week, then it was reported that 40,000, that number had doubled. Well, now it's being reported that about 65,000 federal employees have taken the buyout offer. And Trump is reportedly planning mass layoffs among those who don't take the buyout. So he is like, I am going to cut the federal employees no matter what. I'm going to try it the nice way. It's the typical like mob silk glove hiding a hammer kind of thing. They're going to give you the offer you can't refuse at first, just like a gangster, y'all, just like a gangster, just not as smooth as an actual gangster. He's not even like one of the gangsters we like, right? Nobody's going to make, well, no, that's not true. A lot of Trump supporters, they are going to make movies about this man. They're going to be ridiculous, but I'm telling you it's coming. But okay, back to the actual story. Trump is planning mass layoffs for the rest of the federal workforce that doesn't take the offer. The CIA was also exempt from the initial offer, but they were also extended the buyout option. They extended the buyout option to all of its employees just this past Tuesday, and will also implement a hiring freeze. Apparently, they're doing this on their own. Because it's the CIA. Come on. And I'm not even mad. Can I just say that if the CIA decides it wants to cut its work, do it. Please eliminate yourselves. That would be fantastic. The Office of Personnel Management, when they announced the memo, they were like, "This is okay. This is the memo. This is what it is." Immediately, federal employee unions and whatnot responded to it. So, okay, here are the facts about this situation, folks. And I don't want people, I keep saying this every week, but I really mean it. I want people to stop panicking, because there is some information about the federal workforce and the ebbs and flows of the workforce and what it really is and what the real size of it is that people don't understand, that I am convinced the Republicans know, but they don't care that the truth is actually counter to the claims they are making about the waste in the government and too many government employees, all of this kind of stuff. So what's the truth about the federal government? As I said, more than about 65,000 workers have reportedly taken this buyout offer so far, but that represents about 3% of those who were offered the deal. Which is I guess it's a large number of people in any workforce by any measure, but it's far short of the White House's stated goal of slashing between 5 and 10% of the federal workforce through these buyouts. That might seem like a big deal. Like cutting 5% of the federal workforce might seem like a huge deal, until you find out the attrition rate, the annual attrition rate of the federal government every single year. We're going to get into that. One of the questions people have been asking about this buyout is, do federal employees still need to work after taking the buyout? Now, the buyout basically said you leave now, you don't have to work, and we'll pay you through September if you take the buyout. Guidance posted to the Office of Personnel Management website states that they are not required to work after taking the buyout. However, sample contracts under this buyout scheme that have been sent to some federal employees this week say that they have to agree to work through February 28th. I swear, y'all, The man knew he was lying when the executive order was written, because they knew the federal budget expired in March. So they wrote this thing knowing that they didn't have a guarantee that they were going to be able to pay people through September, because they knew the federal government, the federal budget expired in March. I'm sure they're thinking, look, they've got control of the Senate and the House. They've got control of both chambers. They're going to pass that budget real quick. How do you really think these people are going to keep their promise to put this money into? They've already lied. I don't know why people are believing them when they have lied from the beginning, but I'm just telling you what the truth is. You can do with it what you will. So the sample contracts that people who have taken this offer that have been sent to some federal employees say that they have to agree to work through February 28th, and then they will be put on administrative leave by March 1. The draft contract sent to Environmental Protection Agency employees also acknowledges that the pay guarantee through September 30 is, quote, this is directly from the contract, subject to the availability of appropriations dictated by Congress, which must approve a new budget by the time the current one expires on March 14th. Did that original letter say anything about a budget deadline? Did it say any? Did it contain this legalese, this legal language about, the pay guarantee is subject to the event? No, it didn't. No, it did not. Even though they knew the budget, the current budget expires on March 14th, and they were going to have to vote a new. They knew that when they wrote these buyout letters and sent them to everybody. So in the actual contract, they have to tell people all of the information that they did not tell people at first, because it's a legal contract. So now people who have taken the buyout are receiving the contract, and I hope they are seeing the bait and switch. There are two baits and switches. Well, there are two switches, I guess you could call them, in this contract. Number one, telling federal employees that now they have to agree to work through the end of this month, and then they'll be put on administrative leave on March 1. And the second switch is, we'll pay you through September 30th if the budget that's approved by before the current budget expires includes money to pay. Come on. People have been asking also, how do the buyouts compare to other mass layoffs that we've seen just generally in the American economy? If the Trump administration reaches its goal of cutting 5 to 10% of staff, more than 100,000 people will have to leave the federal workforce. This number of 65,000 people has to double in order for these goals to be met, making it by far the largest layoff in U.S. history in any industry at all, anywhere in the employment landscape. The current record holder is IBM, which cut 60,000 jobs in 1993. And that's interesting, because I thought that the auto industry layoffs a few years before that, like in the late 80s, I think it was, laid off more people than that. But I think I'm thinking of the collective number of employees laid off from all of the big three auto manufacturers, as opposed to just looking at it from like Ford and the number of people that they laid off, and then Chrysler, you know what I mean? So IBM holds the record for laying off the most employees, with 60,000 jobs cut in 1993. The big question, of course, is, are the buyouts legal? Some critics say no. The American Federation of Government Employees and other unions representing more than 800,000 government workers filed a federal lawsuit Tuesday asking the court to stop the directive, which is what the court did, at least delayed it until Monday while the court reviews the legality of it. The union warned its members last week that the existing government budget is only effective through March 14th, so the government cannot guarantee pay beyond them. Employment lawyers and some Democrats have also cast doubt on the legality of the order without congressional approval. All right, so that is being argued in court right now, all of those questions. But what does the data really say about the federal workforce and how it really exists, right? So Trump and Musk, I'm trying to think of a really awful nickname for the two of them. Y'all help me out with that. But Trump and Musk are together in this, and the Department of Government Efficiency that Musk heads. Trump has made Musk a special government employee. That's why he can have access to these government systems and whatnot, because were he just a civilian, he would not be able to. They could have arrested him because he's not supposed to. Civilians aren't supposed to have. But then there's the question of the legality of the Department of Government Efficiency, which is also being argued in court. So we're going to talk about that in a minute too. But first, the federal workforce. In November 2024, just last year, the federal government employed just over 3 million people, or about 1.87% of the entire civilian workforce. This is according to Bureau of Labor Statistics data. The entire federal government only makes up about 1.87% of the entire workforce in this country. Now, that figure doesn't include about 1.3 million active duty military personnel because they're typically not considered employees. It does include 600,000 people who work for the U.S. Postal Service, which is an independent federal agency with semi-autonomous status that operates somewhat like a private business. Not completely and entirely, and we don't want it to operate like a private business, but the neoliberals want that. And by neoliberals, I mean Democrats and Republicans. Yeah, that's another show. Okay, how has the number of federal workers changed over time? This information, by the way, that I'm reading to you right now is from Pew Research. All right, so these are not numbers that Jacqueline has made up. These are numbers that the Pew Research Center, in collaboration with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, have compiled for you and me. So, in absolute terms, the number of federal workers has risen fairly steadily over decades. In November 2000, federal employment, excluding, we're not counting that 600,000 Postal Service workers, federal employment stood at around 1,855,900 people, again, according to BLS data. That number has grown by a little over 1% each year since then to about 2,405,100 people in March of 2024. While the number of federal workers has grown over time, that is true, their share of the civilian workforce has generally been the same. Pretty steady in the same range over the decades. The federal government, again, excluding the Postal Service, accounts for generally over time around 1.5% of total civilian employment over that 2020 that period of time. The Postal Service's workforce, on the other hand, for people who are about to say, who are listening, who I am sure are going to say, well, we need to get rid of the Postal Service. The Postal Service workforce, on the other hand, has fallen by a third since peaking at seasonally adjusted numbers of 909,000 in April of 1999. Okay, despite the agency's announced intentions to reduce headcount, Postal Service employment has hovered at around 600,000 for more than a decade. So I am not, well, I do know why the Postal Service has been, well, we need to cut our workforce. It's because of the attacks from the fiscal conservatives about waste at the Postal Service, because what they really want to do is not to save money in the Postal Service, which is why there's this focus on, excuse me, cutting the workforce. What they want to do is privatize it. They want to privatize, fully privatize the Postal Service. They want to fire all those employees. They want to turn the Postal Service over to Amazon. That's what they want to do. So they always, and the fiscal conservatives, the small government advocates, and these people who are always talking about, I am an advocate of small government. No, they're not an advocate of small government, because they want the same government that they claim is so big and is infringing upon their rights as individuals, is the same government that they want to impose their crazy predatory gender restrictions on queer and trans people. Like, the government is too big that you don't want the government, protecting a woman's right to privacy in what she does with her body, but you want the same government to give high school teachers and coaches the authority to inspect the genitalia of potential students who are trying out for girls sports teams to make sure they're biological girls. Literally, Trump just signed an executive order day before yesterday, banning transgender athletes from girls sports at every level. So you don't want the government to protect the environment so that everybody has clean water to drink, but you do want the government to empower people to pull down the pants or pull up the skirts, pull down the underwear of children to make sure that they're the right biology or the right gender, or however you think that works, but it actually doesn't. You want the government to do that. These people are lying when they say they are small government advocates. They want the government to oppress and oppose their will on people they hate. They do not want the government telling them that they cannot discriminate against those people when they have the ability to. That's what these people want when they talk about some small government. They don't want small government. So, all right, the Postal Service. The Postal Service employment has hovered at around 600,000 employees for more than a decade. The Department of Veterans Affairs, on the other hand, employs more than 486,000 people, giving it by far the largest payroll of the 18 cabinet-level departments, noting that OPM counts the Army, Navy, and Air Force departments separately because they're under the Department of Defense, right? So most of these employees work for the Veterans Health Administration, which operates the VA's extensive network of hospitals, clinics, and nursing homes. The smallest cabinet-level department, with 4,245 workers, is the Department of Education. The Department of Education is like the smallest cabinet level. It's just got 4,000 employees. And these people are about to sign an executive order to do away with the Department of Education. Now, again, there's the issue of legality here in regard to how you can, or whether you can and cannot establish or abolish agencies that have been established by Congress. There is the legality of that. And of course, once that executive order is signed to abolish the Department of Education, they're going to do away with, they're going to sue. So that is definitely going to happen. I'm just telling you, when he signs that executive order, to abolish the Department of Education, people are going to freak out. And I'm telling you not to, because immediately lawsuits are going to be signed. Lawsuits are going to be filed about the legality of that. And it, they're going to do some things, and then a court is going to come and issue some kind of injunction or something like that. Yeah, that is about to happen. Let's see. Among the independent agencies, the largest employer is the Social Security Administration with more than 59,000 workers. Yeah, so that is more than the combined total of 5 cabinet level departments: education, energy, labor, state, and housing and urban development. Then the question is, well, where do most of these employees work? Don't most federal employees work in DC and work in Maryland and Virginia, which has implications that those of us who live in this area understand, because PG County is like literally a 10-minute walk from where I'm literally sitting in my house right now. And PG County is, or at least it used to be, the most wealthy Black suburb in the country. And a lot of folks with these middle class, a lot of these Black middle class folks in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia, they are middle class because they are government employees. They work for one of these federal agencies, or they are employees of the defense contractors. The defense industrial complex is propped up by, I don't know how many defense contractors exist, and the headquarters, almost all of them, are in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. Most of the headquarters of the defense contractors, the Raytheons, the Northrop Grummons, the what's the other one, Boeing, all of these, yeah, they are all, the headquarters are all in like suburban Virginia, and some places in Maryland, 1 or 2 in DC. So that's where a lot of the Black middle class was able to establish itself in this area through those good paying, good benefit government jobs. So a lot of people think that this whole thing is about getting rid of all the Black people in government, because that is what people think about the federal government. People believe that the federal government is made up of mostly Black employees, and most of the people who work for the federal government live in and around DC and the DC, Maryland, Virginia. That is not true. Fewer than a fifth of the workers in OPM's database, about 449,500, work in the District of Columbia or the adjoining states of Maryland and Virginia. Outside that region, California and Texas have the largest contingent of federal employees, with about 147,500 and 130,000 respectively. So 147,500 in California and 130,000 in Texas. About 30,800 federal employees work overseas, and that's probably mostly the USAID employees that just got caught. And I'm trying not to laugh. I just, again, folks, I do wonder about how and why people just went along with these orders to fire people, and when everyone should have known this is going to be held up in the courts. I mean, I really just kind of feel like people should have been like, they're going to have to drag me out of here, which is what one woman did, right? One woman who was at a managerial position. I think she was in the Inspector General Office of the Equal Employment, the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission office. Her position was terminated by Trump. Excuse me. And she basically sat at her desk and said, they're going to have to drag me out of here. And they did. But I applaud her because she resisted. She flat out said, nope, I am not willingly going with this. And I think that was a good thing. So I understand people's fear. I do. And I say this, I don't want people to act as if I am just dismissing their concerns, because I understand the pressure that people are under. Like the president of the United States is trying to fire you. That's pretty, and you know the kind of person he is. I get that people are afraid. You know that his supporters and his appointees, who are now the heads of these agencies, are a bunch of nasty, bigoted bullies who will go after individual. They will not hesitate. I understand. I absolutely understand. And as someone who was fired from my job in 2023, right before I had this kidney transplant surgery, I get it. I absolutely understand. Nobody wants to be fired from their job. Everybody wants to keep their head down and stay employed, because we all have bills we need to eat. We need to pay our rent and our mortgage. But if this moment is truly a a a seminal moment in the history of this country, then why aren't more people, if the decision now that is facing everyone is between preserving what they think is democracy and fascism, I'm not sure why I'm not seeing more people up in arms defending the idea of democracy by just refusing to obey, refusing to comply. Isn't that what you are supposed to do when you're given unjust, illegal, immoral orders, particularly if you know they're going to be challenged in court? I'm not seeing a lot of that. Maybe I'm not looking in the right places, but I'm just saying. I'm just saying. And we are going to talk about some of the efforts that are coalescing right now, in which regular employees are indeed resisting in their own way. I'm just saying the level of resistance we need, if this really is the fascism that everybody is afraid of, the level of resistance we need needs to go beyond changing your Zoom emoji to a spoon. But it is about 33 past the hour, and that means it is time for a WPFW station break. So, engineer extraordinaire, please take it away.
Diversity Fund is a grassroots grant source for changemakers of color in the nation's capital. We fund social justice work by and for DC people of the global majority. The deadline for submissions is Friday, March 21st. Details and application information are available at www.diversityfund.org. You can send questions to info@diversityfund.org. Upcoming info session dates and recordings are accessible online at www.diversityfund.org. The phone number for further information is 202-743-0130. That's 202-743-0130.
All right. Well, I am hoping that the promo is over because I cannot hear any audio. Oh, they're still talking. Okay, let's see.
Wondering how to get WPFW swag in your life? Items that say, I support jazz and justice without saying a word. We've got you covered. Details and browsing at WPFWFM.org. Again, that's WPFWFM.org.
All right. Thank you so much. And very quickly, I want to give a little reminder for folks that this coming
I can't
Wednesday,
hear you.
let me find it. Of course, I can't find it now in my document. This coming Wednesday, the Asada Shakur study group is having an
I
event
still can't hear you.
spreading negative and demeaning descriptions and or visuals is an effective way to create mental images that have people putting emotions over reasoning and can even make the people actually think that the criminal is the victim and the victim is the criminal. That's what Malcolm X said. And that's what Pan-African Community Action will be talking about, anti-African imagery, in the next Assata Shakur study group session. They'll examine how Malcolm's messaging and ideas still apply today. That is on February 12th at 7 p.m. at the Black Workers and Wellness Center, 2500 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue Southeast in Washington, D.C. That's February 12th, 7 p.m. for the Assata Shakur Public Study Group at the Black Workers and Wellness Center. So thanks so much for that station break. And so, folks, this situation with the federal workforce and people being laid off and all of the, the buyout and all of this kind of stuff, people are very confused about how this is going to reduce the workforce, or whether it's actually going to reduce the workforce. But here's the thing that people are very unaware of. Did you know that every year around 5 to 6% of the federal workforce leaves? The attrition rate, the rate of employees voluntarily leaving employment in the federal workforce every year is around 5 to 6%. So what Trump is trying to do, it's very interesting. Trump made a big deal about trying to reduce the federal workforce by a percentage that the federal workforce always reduces itself by people voluntarily leaving, retiring, getting another job, whatever, every year. So that is very interesting. Then, of course, there is the issue that in 2020, I think it was, or whatever the year with the highest COVID transmission rate, that was the year that the attrition rate for the federal government reached its highest level ever. And that was around 7%. Trump has said that he wants to reduce the government to up to 10%, but technically, that has never actually happened. The only time it has gotten close to that just naturally was during that year where COVID restrictions had the attrition rate at about 7%. And I'm having a little issue here with our audio in the studio. So please forgive me and
Friday
hold
host, Reverend
on.
Lennox Yearwood
I'm hoping that
is one of the
everything
Black
is
voices
good.
for
I'm hoping
climate
that
and environmental
he's
justice
hearing,
that will be
that
featured
everyone
at
in the
this year's
studio
Taking
can
Nature Black
hear
Conference,
everyone
March 5th through the
online.
8th.
To
Presented
let
by
me know
Nature
if
Forward,
you're good in the
the theme,
studio.
Reclamation and Resilience, is both
Can you
online
hear me?
and
Can you hear me?
Okay, I cannot hear him. He
Nothing.
cannot hear me. This is
inspiration,
fantastic.
and more.
Let's see what's going on.
Details about Taking Nature Black
Here,
Conference
okay,
at
that is in my speaker.
natureforward.org/Taking Nature Black. All one word.
Yep, my speaker
Taking
is
Nature Black.
working.
That's
I am
Taking
not
Nature
sure
Black,
why they're
Reclamation
not
and
hearing
Resilience,
me.
March 5th through the
Let's
8th.
see what's
I
going
think
on.
we're having an audio connection.
I am not hearing you. You're not hearing me. I can see you. Everything looks like it is working
continue,
on my end.
continue.
Okay, let's just keep going. Sometimes these things happen. A little bit annoying, but we'll get through it. So every year, the attrition rate for the federal government is between 5 and 6%. Under normal circumstances, every single year, that's just how it is. Trump would literally have to just outright fire people in order to reach a 10% attrition rate. Because even with the 65,000 people who have accepted the buyout, that still does not reach, it doesn't even go over the typical annual attrition rate of the federal government. So Trump is literally offering people a buyout who were going to retire anyway, who were going to leave, so that's why so many people have accepted this offer. That is why so many people are oh my God, 65. A lot of those people are folks who were already going to leave. And the conditions under which they would leave the federal government might not have been as beneficial as the buyout conditions were, because maybe some of those people had not worked in federal government long enough for them to accrue a big enough retirement portfolio that they would benefit from. Maybe they hadn't been in the federal government that long. So maybe this buyout was exactly what they were looking for. Oh, I can leave this job and I'm going to get paid through September, my regular salary. And okay. And because if I retired right now, if I left the federal service right now, yeah, I would still have my pension, but I really couldn't draw on it yet because I have not put the years or the what is it, the years or the time or whatever it is that weird calculation that they do to determine if you're qualified, if it's time for you to retire yet. If you've been in federal service for enough years, or if you had some other metric that I can't remember. But a lot of the people who took this buyout were people who were already going to leave federal service. So again, Trump is really just, it's age. That's right. I heard my mama's voice because my mother worked for the Department of Labor for like 35 years. And if she had lived, she probably would have been able to retire in another 3 years, 3 or 4 years, once she got to, I think, 40 years or, her retirement age. But yeah, it's years or age. So some of these people, and I would bet it's a lot of these people who have taken this buyout have decided to leave their jobs in the federal government with their pension that they can't draw on yet because they don't have the years or the age to withdraw the pension. So getting paid while they don't work come on. Of course they're going to take that offer. And of course, I didn't think it made sense that people would take the offer until I looked into how the federal government just kind of turns over its workforce naturally. 5-6% of the federal workforce just leaves every single year. So Trump is taking credit for doing something that was already going to happen anyway. Just like he is taking credit, or people are giving him credit or blaming him for reneging on the ceasefire deal and offering publicly to ethnically cleanse Gaza for Israel, and then saying that Israel is going to turn over Gaza to the United States, and the United States is going to develop. First of all, remember I told y'all that Trump is the reason he implemented that ceasefire was because he wants to do that waterfront, that beachfront property deal that his son-in-law floated a few years ago. He wants to do that. I told you that. He wants to do that deal. He wants to develop that beachfront property in Gaza. That's why he did that ceasefire, not out of the kindness of his heart. No, what he wanted was not to have to pay for the cleanup. But he absolutely wants those people gone. The thing that people are missing is that it has been reported that the Biden administration offered the exact same deal. And I'm realizing what I'm saying, and I'm going to reverse it in a minute. The exact same deal. Biden did the exact same thing. He offered the precise same thing. If we can get the surrounding Arab countries to take the Palestinians, we'll make them go there. And we'll clean out Gaza for you, Israel. That is what Biden offered Israel in private last year. So the truth is not that not that Biden offered the same thing Trump did. It's that Trump offered the same thing Biden did. Trump did the exact same thing that Biden did. The only difference is the way it was done. That is literally the only thing that is different about what Trump offered in regard to ethnically cleansing Palestinians from Gaza and what Biden offered in ethnically cleansing Palestinians from Gaza. And Trump doing it publicly and saying it publicly does not make it worse or permanent, because Biden offered the same in private. So because I tell you in private that I do not love you anymore, I want a divorce, I want you out, get out right now, I will help you move, I'm going to pack up your stuff. If I tell you that privately, is that temporary just because I told you privately? If I do it in front of everybody at my birthday party, I want the same thing to happen. It's the exact same thing. You are going to do the exact same thing. I am going to help you. I'm going to put your stuff in trash bags. Whether I tell you in public or in private, you will get out of my house. I'm filing for a divorce. We will no longer be a couple, an item. Is the outcome of any of that different? Is the meaning of any of that different if I tell you that in the privacy of our kitchen, or if I tell you that in the middle of Metro Center? This is the bizarre kind of, I don't know what kind of things people are thinking about this situation with Trump doing the same thing, offering the same thing that Biden offered. And remember, Biden and Harris were the same people who said they were tirelessly working for a ceasefire. Tirelessly, that's what Harris said. Tirelessly working for how can you be tirelessly working for a ceasefire and offering the people who are committing genocide help to ethnically cleanse the survivors or the ones they didn't kill? Come on. But people are actually looking at this situation and saying, well, I know that Trump said the same thing that Biden said, but it's worse that Trump said it because when Trump did it in public, he made it permanent. That's not, come on. We have to stop making excuses for liberal fascism. That's what's going on here, folks. People are trying to make it seem like Trump is doing things that are unprecedented, things that are never and have never been seen in the history of America. And I have been trying to tell people, folks have done worse. Folks like Democrats. Or they've done the same thing, or Trump is just doing exactly what Democrats have done in private. He's just brazen about it. He wants to take credit. That's the thing that I want to get to. He wants to take credit for doing these awful, inhumane, evil things. He knows that these things have already been done, or they have been done before, or the foundation has been laid by other people. He does not care. He wants to take credit for doing these things. He is not concerned that he is using Biden's playbook. He is literally using Biden's play. He is running Biden's play. He is just doing it in a different uniform with a different color jersey on. That's it. And the only thing that is important to Trump is that he is made out to be a hero for doing it. He knows that this was Biden's idea. But he did a public press conference because he wants to take credit for it. And a lot of folks, a lot of you are giving him credit for it. And I do not know why. I honestly do not know why. I do understand that the things that he is doing outside of this one thing, the things that he is threatening to do, the things that he and his acolytes and minions are trying to do, very concerning, raises very serious concerns about constitutionality, and that's a whole nother conversation right there. But it should be raising a whole lot of concerns about constitutionality and legality, and does he have the authority to do this, and how much authority a president has. And there it is. We want to think, and I think it's very easy for us to fall back on what he really wants to do is get rid of all the blacks. I think that's a byproduct. That's part of it, surely, but I don't think that's the main thing. It's a thing. I think it's one of the things. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't have made such a big deal about DEI. And let me tell you, DEI is not a big deal. It has never been a big deal, because no program that has ever been instituted since the passing and the alleged implementation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 has ever addressed racial inequality in the workforce in a way that benefits primarily or even mostly Black people. You and I should know, and if you don't know, I am now going to tell you, affirmative action, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, DEI, whatever people think quotas are, whatever people think is being done to hire a bunch of unqualified Black people in the name of diversity, just to bring a bunch of unqualified Black folks off the street who don't know anything, don't know how to do anything, and aren't good for anything. That is not happening. That has never happened. Because you know who has benefited from affirmative action and programs like, and whatever you want to call them, DEI, diversity programs, equality whatever you want to call them. They've been around since the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. They're not new just because the new name for these programs is DEI. It's just a new name. It's the same framework, same purpose, same type of idea. You have to be proactive in recruiting the most qualified people from underrepresented communities, not just anybody, but the most qualified people in those communities. Why? Because normally you people are lazy, you people meaning the bosses, you people are lazy, and you will always only go for the white people. And that has been historically. I'm not being mean, I'm not being bigoted. That's just the reality of the situation. Equality, the bosses must be made to pursue equality and to establish a diverse workforce, because we have seen that historically they will not do it unless they are made to. Why? Because the bosses, the boards of directors, even the chief diversity officers who run these DEI, these equality, these affirmative action programs, most of them are white. And most white people, whether you believe it or understand it or not, you operate with a bias that has been indoctrinated in you against everybody who is not like you. So the people who have benefited the most from affirmative action, from these equality, diversity focused programs, have been white women. White women. Black people benefit the least from these programs. Why? Because the people who run the programs are usually white, and they still operate through their implicit bias, or whatever you want to call it. They have biases that they still implement, that they still allow to influence even the way they run the so-called diversity that has always been true. So this whole thing about DEI, Trump wanting to get all the Black folks out of the federal government, that's why he's doing. No, we need to stop responding to this man's chaos orders with terror and emotionality, and we need to respond with facts, and we need to respond by organizing. This is what needs to happen. Resistance needs to be organized. It needs to not be one person refusing to leave their office. It needs to be the whole floor. It needs to be the entire department. It needs to be everybody in the agency. If you really believe that the agency, whatever it is, does the good work that you think it does, then it needs to be everybody in the agency barring the doors to keep these people that you say are fascists from coming in. Because I don't understand why there has been so little public resistance to fascists taking over government systems. If you're that afraid of fascism, you ought to be acting like you're afraid of fascism. But that's all the time we have for Darker Than Blue for today. There's never enough time, but that's okay. There will be another Friday, and we'll be back. And I'm sure we'll have more to talk about. Stay tuned for News Views with Garland Nixon, and then stay tuned for Robin's Place with all of the fantastic Friday evening music that I love, and I think you will love too. You all watching on Black Liberation Media, stay tuned for the Dark Room here on WPFW 89.3 in Washington, D.C. Go on over to Black Liberation Media on YouTube. Those of you listening to hang out in the dark room. Until next week, y'all. Peace. If you are willing to fight for it, so fight right now. All right then, y'all. I don't know what was going on. I don't know what the hell was going on with the with the audio with WP. I'm not sure what the hell was going on there, and I apologize for that little mix up in between. But I hope you all got something out of that with that little snafu. I was moving a bunch of stuff around in here today, setting up. If you notice, the camera angle looks a little different because I have my teleprompter thing set up. And I've got my, I have to set up my tablet now to use with the teleprompter. So yeah, I just didn't have time to get all that done because I was lazy. I didn't get up early enough today. I was tired. I have 3 meetings tomorrow. They are in person. BAP Mid-Atlantic will be in this house tomorrow. I have to vacuum the floor downstairs. I got to clean the bathroom. You know how we do when guests come over. I do keep it clean house. But when you have a dog, there's dog hair all over the place all the time. And in the winter, because dogs that shed a lot, dogs that have undercoats, and Kimathi is a Rottweiler and a Lab mix. 2 very furry fucking dogs. 2 furry dogs with massive undercoats during the winter. So when it's cold, this dog, he real fluffy. That's a lot of that is muscle. He just thick, but a lot of it is fur. So he's got this big old undercoat that is just out of fucking control during the winter. And so, yeah, I got to vacuum. I got to spray him down. So when he's not running through the house, the fur is not just flying by. It gets bad. Ask anybody with a Rottweiler or a Lab how it gets when they shed. Oh my God. I gotta vacuum in here twice a week just to keep control of the hair. So yeah, so I'm sorry I didn't have time to do y'all's promo graphic for the dark room. So here, we're just gonna use last week's. There you go. Dun, da, da. I will get better at this as time goes on. I've been saying that for like 8 years. Anyway, tonight's libations are brought to you from, unfortunately, Corona, because I had some beer left over and we don't waste beer in this house. So there you go. Now, let's talk about Bill Clinton, Slick Willie, NAFTA, nasty NAFTA, and the impact NAFTA had on immigration. Because I did not know this. Excuse me. Let me get my sinuses right. Sorry, y'all. That also is something that I struggle a lot more with ever since the kidney transplant and the medication I'm taking that suppresses my immune system. Little things, seemingly little things that didn't bother me as much bother me all the time now. Like my sinuses are always draining, partially because of the up and down weather. My sinuses are impacted by the barometric pressure a lot. And since I take these immunosuppressants, I really can't do a whole lot about it except for the irrigation. So I've always got this sinus drainage. That is a pain in it. So I take Claritin a couple times a day, usually twice a day, but it's a pain in the behind. So that's one of the things that you notice. I'm always having to clear my sinuses when I talk a lot, because when you do talk, that actually moves the fluid around in your sinuses. So I know that's more than you wanted to know, but I'm grossed out by it. So I need you to be grossed out by it too. I didn't want to be grossed out by it alone. So there we go. All right. Dog hair. I'm allergic to cats. I'm allergic to cat hair. I love cats. I want all of the cats in the neighborhood to hang out at my house, but I am allergic to cat hair, so I can't have cats. Anyway, so let's get to Bill Clinton. Oh, I'm sorry. I did want to talk about this dude, this little kid, this little 25-year-old dude on Elon Musk's team. And I just really thought that this was so funny, because here's this 25-year-old dude who was working at this agency that Trump just made up out of whole cloth, which, I mean, yeah, all the agencies are made up out of whole cloth, but Congress established those other agencies. These people just literally pulled what was it? Department of Oversight and Government, whatever it's called, a Department of Government Efficiency. That's what it's called. They just pulled that shit out their ass. That's what they did. That is the. And I mean, I'm between you and me, it is kind of gangster that you just created a whole government agency out of nothing, and you just did it, and was like, okay, it's done, and went on to the next thing. Like, see, this is I think, when I look at the way Trump is moving right now in this time, in this little weird limbo time period in between the executive orders being issued and the actions being carried out and obeyed, I cannot stress that enough. How people, oh Lord, he's gonna usher in full-blown fascism. And all the people who were afraid of him ushering in full-blown fascism, that browbeat everybody else that they had to vote for Kamala Harris because, were you going to vote for the fascists? They're quiet now. They are quiet as fuck now. Where they at? Now, it's true. Some people are doing some things. And I just didn't have time to get into in Darker Than Blue some of the things that people are doing. Like, I guess I don't know what the spoon thing is about. It was so stupid, I didn't even care. Like, for real. When I saw on one of the news stories about one of the ways the federal employees are resisting is on the Zoom calls, they're changing their emojis, their icons to a spoon. I don't know what the fuck that's supposed to mean. I don't know what the fuck that's supposed to do, but I didn't really want to find out what it meant or what it's supposed to do because it doesn't do shit. It doesn't do anything. So what? That's the equivalent of a pussy hat. And listen, I understand that not everybody is as nuts as I am. Like, I understand that not everybody is willing to put their bodies on the line. I am fine with, yeah, it hurt my feelings when we got fired from Sputnik. It hurt my feelings because I love that job. I am a journalist. I am good at what I do. I loved working with Sean Blackman. I love that brother. You understand? That young man is my brother forever. You better not never say nothing. Don't you ever say anything bad about Sean Blackman and let me find out about it. I love the people I work with. I loved what we did. It was great. And it's true. They paid us real well. So I was able to do a lot for the movement, for people who I love and who I was able to do a lot. I was able to help people in the way that I wanted to help people. And I was really happy about that. So when I lost that job, yeah, my feelings were hurt, but I was like, you know what? Fuck you too. Fuck you, because you can't pay me enough to compromise my principles on Palestinian resistance. Nope. I don't know what it is you want us to say, but I'm not going to say it. And we were all that. So yeah, none of us wanted to lose our jobs, but none of us were going to compromise to keep it. Do you understand? That's what I'm not seeing in the way people are responding to this. I get that people are afraid to lose their jobs. People got to eat. You know, everybody's not crazy like me, because I didn't know how. And I knew that I was waiting for the call for that surgery. And I literally got the call telling me that they found a kidney for me a day later, the next day. I really didn't even have time to really be mad and depressed about it. But so I know people are not willing. They're not in a position to be able to just lose a job, because of course they're, 1 or 2 paychecks away from being homeless. I understand that. Absolutely. So I certainly do not expect everybody to have the same kind of response that I had to being faced with losing my job. Because for me, the choice is always going to be, I am not going to compromise my integrity to keep this job. I can't do it, because I have to live with myself. And at the end of my life, I have to answer for me. Nobody else is going to come in and say, well, she was in a tough spot. And I got too many people who have couches, extra beds, who I know have food. I'm going to be all right. If I have to move 16 people in this joint to help me pay this mortgage, or if I have to go live with a couple of my relatives, or if I have to get a one-way ticket to Colombia and camp out on somebody else's couch, I'll be fine. I'll be all right. So this is what I believe in my head. And this is what I know in my heart. I have been unemployed before, and I have made it okay. I know it may not always be that way. So I understand that people are afraid. I get it. People are afraid. So I don't expect everybody to be able to get up and show some courage. But damn, nobody? Like one person? And everybody else is putting spoons on their Zoom emoji? What the fuck? I don't understand how, if people are concerned about the legality of the executive orders Trump has issued, if they know they are being reviewed by the courts, if they believe this man and his minions are fascists, How are these people getting into these bills? Because I'm expecting to see people scrapping at the door. Do you understand? All these people, they talking about, we can't, this is a crisis of democracy. This is a full-blown constitutional crisis. Then how come y'all are not storming these agency buildings like those mugs did on January 6th when they stormed the Capitol, when they believed that the election was stolen from their Fuhrer? Do y'all understand where I'm getting to? Do you understand where I'm going with this? Because there is a way that liberals, easy, don't bring queer people into this shit like that. Don't do that. Do not do that. Whatever your beef is with queer and trans people, you made a couple of comments like that. Don't do that. That is not where this conversation needs to go. We do not need to be calling out people who are already triple marginalized. I do not expect queer people or trans people or Black people or Hispanic, Chicano, Mexican, immigrants. I don't expect the disabled. I don't expect the most marginalized among those people to do the heavy lifting for the largest group of people who are doing nothing. And that's white folks. That's who I'm talking to. I cannot believe I had to make that clear. But yeah, I do. All of those other marginal you got queer people who are already having a hard time in employment because people have an attitude because of their pronouns. But every time the FedEx driver comes to the, oh, did they deliver the package? Did he? You don't have a problem with pronouns. You have a problem with queer people. That's your problem. Because anytime somebody knocks on the door or leaves something out, you have no problem saying he or they, or what are they doing? Where is he going? Is that her? Is that her person? You don't have a problem with pronouns. Everybody knows what pronouns are. Nobody has a problem with pronouns. People who complain about pronouns hate gay people, period. People who have an issue with trans people have, why do people give a damn about how people present themselves in regard to their gender? It doesn't have anything to do with you. It's literally not your business. If you show up one day to a place where I am working and you look like a woman one day, and the next day you look like a man, I'm going to call you what you want me to call you. Because whatever it is that's your business. Just like I can come to work one day with locks and the next day I might cut them all off. Or, as I actually did, I'll come to work one day and my last name is Malone, and the next day I come to work and my last name is Lukman, and you bet not call me by my maiden name again. You better call me Mrs. Lukman even today. So stop picking on already marginalized people as if they're the one, as if we have to save white people. We don't. I'm not even talking to queer people. They got enough. Now, there are some queer people who are the log cabin Republicans. No, fuck them. They're weirdos. Just like there are Black folks who are conservatives. We ain't talking to them either. I'm not talking to them. When I'm talking to them niggas, I will tell you when I'm talking to them. If I ever have anything to say to the Black queer community or to the queer conservative community, I'll tell you. But whenever I am talking about people who need to get up off their ass and do something, show some courage and fight like they claim they were going to fight, overt fascism, I'm talking about white folks. So please, let us not bring in another marginalized group of people who are already getting their ass kicked by the white folks who they are surrounded by, who ain't doing shit, while the alleged fascist just is allowed to come in and take over shit. Do I really expect queer people and Black people, the folks that this man and his minions have already targeted, to be the ones blocking the door to keep Elon Musk from? Oh my God. And really, mostly when I'm talking about, how are these people just walking up into these agencies? I'm really talking about the security forces, because you know how we've talked about all of these federal agencies have police forces. Like there is a Department of Treasury police force, security force. There is an FBI security force. There is a Department of Education security. Where they at? Now, sadly, most of those people, a lot of those people in those security forces, I won't say most because I don't know that that's true, but a lot of those people are Black. But y'all took this job. You took this job. And I get that, is a paycheck. But if the same people who were white folks, who told everybody, who browbeat everybody, who gaslit everybody, who shamed and shit on people who were voting third party, who didn't vote because they refused to vote for genocide, all of the white folks, all of the white liberals specifically, because I'm not even talking about conservatives. Conservatives are doing exactly what I expect them to do. Because what I think I'm trying to convey is that one of the reasons there has been so little resistance to everything Trump is trying to do, because really what this man is doing is he's just throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks, not because he's bored or because he's chaotic, he is testing the limits of presidential power. And he is forcing the courts and ultimately the Supreme Court to confront the issue of how much power the president, the office of the president, is allowed to have. That is what he's doing. He's not trying to get rid of all the Black folks in government. He doesn't really care. His supporters now, his base, they want him to get rid of all the Black people, but Trump, he doesn't care. So, Trump is not, I don't think his focus is to get rid of Black people. I don't think he cares whether there are Black people in there. He doesn't care. He's using language that he knows will make his base happy, right? The whole DEI thing, that man don't give a shit about DEI. He knows damn well DEI, that he knows DEI had nothing to do with those plane crashes. And people would just, he fired 2 people from the FAA, 2 people in senior management positions who were not air traffic controllers, had nothing to do with air traffic controllers, didn't hire air traffic controllers, didn't cause the shortage of air traffic controllers, and no amount of explaining to people that those people that Trump fired at the FAA were management position and had nothing, no amount of telling people that would shut them up about blaming Trump firing FAA employees on the plane crash. Jesus Christ. And people were as bad with that shit as Trump was and his friends were with blaming the plane crashes on DEI. Good grief. It was 2 sides of the same dumbass coin. Tying things that are not connected to an awful tragedy to the tragedy just to feed your narrative. So what Trump is doing is ultimately he's forcing the courts to have to decide how much power does a president really have? Because this is not really something that has been detailed in the Constitution, or this is the argument that Trump and the Republicans are making. So this is why he's issuing all of these hundreds of executive orders in the first weeks of his presidency, and he's making all these threats and tariffs and all of this kind of stuff. Ultimately, what's going to happen, I think, if what they are saying means what I think it means, even if the lower courts rule against a lot of these executive orders, which is already kind of starting to happen a little bit because the courts have not outright overturned these executive orders yet. What they've done is they have put a hold on their implementation while they review the legality of it and they go through the lawsuits that have been filed against them. So the courts have not blocked a lot of these executive orders. They've put them on hold while the cases are adjudicated. All right, just want to make that clear. But Trump's folks say that the executive branch under the Constitution is under the authority of the president. And when Congress passes laws limiting authority of the executive branch, they are violating the Constitution. That hasn't been brought up before the Supreme Court in a long time. That is the end goal for what Trump is doing. I tell folks all the time, I tell y'all all the time, I say it all the time, and people think I'm just, you have to read the whole article. You really do. You have to, I know they are filled with lies and imperialist trash and bullshit, and yes, but you have to read the entire article because the truth is always in there, buried in a paragraph, 15 paragraphs down. And this comes from, that quote comes from, let me get the article. Let me make sure. Hold on. I think this is, I think this is the Pew Research one. I'm going to drop it in the chat for you so you can have the information I have. So that is the end goal. Trump wants to expand the powers of the presidency. So he has already talked about or threatened passing a law to give him a third term. He is already said that this will be the last election in the United States. So really what they're trying to do, and then that quote comes from this guy named, I can't make this up. This man's name is Hans von Spakovsky. Right out of the damn Sound of Music. He was the understudy for Von Trapp, apparently. I don't know. Hans von Spakovsky, a senior legal fellow with the Conservative Heritage Foundation, said the Constitution gives Trump the power to run the executive branch the way he wants, regardless of Congress's efforts to limit him. Now, as much as people were up in arms about Project 2025, and that's the only reason anybody ever paid any attention to the Heritage Foundation, and I told people, they have been doing this ever since the Southern Strategy, to tell you the truth. They've been doing this ever since the Civil Rights Movement. They've been doing this. The conservatives, they have been saying shit like this. They have been trying to reshape the government so they can elect someone they can put in there who can expand the powers of the government so they can install a theocratic. This has been their plan all along. So this has never been about Trump, y'all. This has always been about the duopoly. Because if I know this, the Democrats know this. They know all about the Heritage Foundation. They know all about these people. And they don't pay any attention to the Heritage Foundation. When have you ever heard the Democrats talk about the Heritage Foundation and the danger they pose to American jurisprudence and governance? They never said that. But isn't that their job as the so-called opposition party? Man. So that's really their end goal with this. All of this chaos that this man is creating with these executive orders, all it is he's doing what he really wants to do, but he's doing it through executive order in order to create this crisis, this legal crisis, clogging up the courts with all of these lawsuits, knowing that people are going to carry some of this stuff out in the meantime before the rulings come out. And then the rulings come out and some of them are going to be ruled against. He's going to have to dial some of this back, and then people aren't going to want to dial it. No. What's going to happen when the courts do ultimately rule against some of these executive orders and say, no, you can't do that? The DOGE is not a federal agency. They don't have the authority to do this. Now, the courts have already banned or barred Elon Musk from accessing Treasury systems and data. He can't even look at it. The team that he had going, plugging in external drives and devices to the Treasury systems, which again is illegal. You cannot do that in any and every federal agency, even if you are an employee. You cannot take a thumb drive that you have in your possession that you purchased for yourself, plug that thumb drive into the desktop at your desk, at your government job, and transfer information, data from that desktop's hard drive onto you. That is illegal. You cannot do that. They will fire you for that. This is the same discussion we had about Hillary Clinton destroying government hard drives with a hammer. That was illegal too. So now Musk has been barred from accessing the data. His team members who had gone into the computers, mainframes or whatever, and was fucking around with the code, they have been barred from messing around with the code. They can look at it. It's read only. I don't know why, but okay. But they can't do anything to it, and they can no longer use devices and plug the devices into the systems to transfer data. So that has happened, but that is also not permanent. That is done to preserve the integrity of the data while the courts adjudicate the lawsuits against the DOGE, against Musk, against Trump. But the funny thing, the interesting thing about this whole thing with Musk was this little 25-year-old kid named Marco Elez, who hours after the judge issued the decision to bar Musk and his folks from accessing the Treasury Department data's payment system, he quit. He resigned. He just quit. And that wasn't because, of the order. What had happened was the Wall Street Journal reported on some social media posts that were dug up through the Wayback Machine from an account, I guess, that he wasn't using anymore from, I forget what year it was, but it was a few years ago. He said there was some where was it? There were some racist posts that were found on this old account that he had. And the things he posted, a Twitter account, it was an old Twitter account. The things that he posted, I'm sorry, that's right, it was 2024. So it wasn't like 6 years ago. Literally last year, 2024. Posts from an account connected to Marco Elez on Musk's platform X, and noted that White House officials confirmed his resignation after the paper pointed out Elez's activity on the social media site. What was his activity, you ask? This little boy posted, "You could not pay me to marry outside of my ethnicity. Normalize Indian hate." A separate post from that month read. Then in July of just last year, he said, just for the record, "I was racist before it was cool." That's what he said. In other posts from December, just a few months ago, the account pushed for repealing the Civil Rights Act and said, "I just want a eugenic immigration policy." Eugenic Immigration policy, is that too much to He thought he deleted his post, but NPR has independently confirmed the post using the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. Protect the Wayback Machine at all costs, and Internet Archive, which scrapes and archives vast parts of the open web. But of course, Vice President J.D. Vance on Friday said he disagrees with Elez's post, disagrees with them. Not they are vile, racist, disgusting filth. I disagree with them. But that stupid social media activity should not ruin a kid's life. He didn't post this shit when he was 12. And I would give a little bit, a tiny bit, this much credence to that argument. Oh, you know, he was a kid. He was a stupid kid. It shouldn't ruin his life. If he had posted this when he was 15, I might, maybe, on a good day, on even days during the week, after I have eaten 3 meals a day and had 10 hours of sleep, that never happens on the same day. But if those things all aligned and it was the end of the world the next day, I might give a little bit of credence to that argument if he had posted this shit at 15. But he posted this shit last year when he was 25. So ruin a kid's life? No, ruin it. He ruined his own, ruin it. And of course, Musk has said he will be brought back. To err is human, to forgive is divine. Of course, everybody's favorite apartheid American would say that. Elon Musk, whose parents profited off of emeralds. They own an emerald mine, and they owned it under South African apartheid. That's how they acquired it. They stole it from the South African people. So now when these people and Trump are talking about, land is being stolen in South Africa, it's not being stolen. Land is being returned to the original owners, to the indigenous people of the land. Land that belongs to the people is being reallocated to the people that it belongs to. That's what's happening. Land back is what's happening in South Africa. And the whites are mad. That is what, just like they were mad when it was being done in Zimbabwe. When Mugabe was taking the land back, I think it was Mugabe was taking the land back, taking it from the Boer farmers who came from, where the hell did they come from? Switzerland? Somewhere. Holland, that's right, because they were Dutch. The Dutch settler colonists, those are the ones who, in Zimbabwe, they stole that land from the indigenous Africans, from the Azanians. So what Mugabe did was he gave the land. Mugabe did the same thing that Cuba did during the revolution. Take the land of the plantation owners, redistribute it to the people. Did the same thing that was done in Nicaragua after the revolution. The same thing that was done in Venezuela after the revolution. Do you see how? So every time the whites who have come in and stolen from the people, they get mad when you correct. They don't like. What's the legal word for it? A recompense. What is it when they make you pay back as a part of a court sentence? It starts with an R. It's not what is the word? It's not retribution, but it's when they will literally garnish your paycheck in order for you to pay somebody back for the damage you could. Thank you. Restitution. That's what it is. Thank you. They hate restitution. And so when we talk about reparations to these people, that's why they respond to it. It's restitution. They know what it is. They know what they've stolen. They know the value of what they've stolen. They don't want to give it back. That's why they hate reparations, not because they don't know how much. Come on, you know what that is. They don't want to pay it back. They will not. That just really is the beginning and the end of it. So all of these intellectual arguments we keep trying to have with these damn people about reparations and restitution is what we really should be calling it. We're wasting our breath because the way Musk and them are responding right now about the appropriate and accurate redistribution of the people's land in South Africa, that's the way they have always acted to them having to pay restitution for their crimes. So, of course, Musk is going to hire back the little racist. Of course he is. That should surprise no one. It shouldn't surprise anyone. And he knew what that meant. Anytime Elon Musk is himself, like apparently at some point this week, he was deleting people's accounts who posted negative things about what they were doing at the Treasury. You know damn well, if he has that much involvement in the everyday activity that goes on that platform, you know damn well he knows what all of the people who are on his team have posted. He knew what that 25-year-old posted, and that's why he hired him. That's why he brought him on his team. Because ideologically, he wants the same thing Musk does. Y'all need to take these people at their word. Goodness. All right, enough about Trump and his stuff, doggone it. Now let's get to Bill Clinton. Because this whole thing with immigration and people making a big deal about, you know, the ICE raids and a huge aspect of this crisis or issue with immigration at the southern border actually is connected to the North American Free Trade Agreement that was signed by Slick Willie. Now, the North American Free Trade Agreement created an environment in which it was claimed that it would provide jobs, because that's always the claim, right? Millions of jobs in Mexico and in the US. That's what they claimed, right? And it created a system where it allowed people from the US, from Canada and Mexico to work in the United States under a special visa program created by NAFTA. And it was called a non-immigrant visa for professionals. But the visa requirements under NAFTA didn't include provisions for the free movement of people across borders. So the TN visas allow qualified professionals from Canada and Mexico to work in the United States temporarily. They were called temporary, something. I can't remember what the N is for. Temporary visas. Eligible professions. This is very important. The professions that were, excuse me. Oh, this sinus stuff is killing me. The professions that were eligible under this TN visa program through NAFTA was accountants, engineers, lawyers, pharmacists, scientists, and teachers. The North American Free Trade Agreement created a special visa for filling positions in the professions of accountants, engineers, lawyers, pharmacists, scientists, and teachers for people from Canada and Mexico. You don't think there were enough people in this country in those professions to you to, because I know people were going to college for these things, like you see what is it me? I'm like, don't we have these people? and I'm not saying this because I don't want Canadians or Mexicans to do this. No, I'm just saying this because it's like, why did this need to be done? This was not needed. There was not a shortage of people in these there wasn't this. So what happened was, because these temporary visas were for obviously white collar jobs, and NAFTA did not include provisions for allowing workers outside of these specific industries to have or to be allowed free movement between borders from Canada to the US and from Mexico to the US. Everybody outside of these professions who applied for a work visa under NAFTA were denied work visas, which meant that all of those agricultural workers NAFTA's initial expectations or the promises were, of course, this just massive prosperity. Mexico would prosper. The US would prosper. Canada would prosper. That's not what happened. What ended up happening was that many Mexicans who lived in rural areas, and a lot of people in Mexico live, a lot more people in Mexico live in rural areas outside of the major cities and very far away from cities close to the US border. Most of those people were already earning poverty level wages from farming, and it got worse under NAFTA because NAFTA pulled jobs. Instead of creating more jobs, it concentrated specific jobs in these border towns. And those jobs, which were the warehouse jobs, the low paid manufacturing jobs, they did not create the kind of wages and economic prosperity that was promised. What they did was created more poverty in the rural areas, which forced more people to migrate to where the jobs were, closer to the US border at those warehouses. And y'all saw the picture of that gigantic Amazon warehouse somewhere in Mexico that's on the Mexico side of the border, and the poverty surrounding that. Those are the kinds of conditions NAFTA created. So people moving in from the rural areas to find what they believe are better paying jobs. They get there, they see these jobs are paying them about the same poverty wages or lower that they were making on their farms in their rural areas. And now they realize they're still poor. They can't. What do? They're right there at the border. And we know that lettuce needs to be picked. We know those Americans need their strawberries and their blueberries, and they're not going to pick them. So NAFTA deepened poverty in Mexico because it didn't raise wages, and it didn't create more good paying jobs. The only good paying jobs were the ones in those specific categories. All of the other jobs that NAFTA affected drove those wages down. And because of more people migrating from the suburbs and the countryside to the cities closer to the border in Mexico, and eventually having to cross the border to hopefully get a seasonal farm job, going back and forth, doing that. A lot of people do that. They might work at these factories or these, places that NAFTA created, these big American or Canadian corporations created these low-paying warehouse or manufacturing jobs in the big cities on the border. But then they're still not making enough money to support themselves. So they got to do the same thing we got to do. They got to work 2 and 3 jobs. And those 2 or 3, the second or third job is on some American agribusiness's farm, picking our fruit and vegetables during the season. And then when the season is over, they take that extra money that they made and they go back across the border. That's what NAFTA created. It created and it literally incentivized increased migration. How did it incentivize increased migration? By driving the wages down and deepening poverty for people outside of the major cities. In this increase in migrant activity, yes, the violations of people's rights has been raised, but what has also happened is that as migration has increased, then more and more repressive anti-immigration laws were passed. And it's not a coincidence that NAFTA was passed at around the same time as those immigration laws, as the crime bill. Because the one industry that all of those pieces of legislation feed into is the private prison industry. Because what do they do with the migrants that they're calling illegal immigrants and they've broken the law? The United States government under Bill Clinton, a Democrat, crafted, signed, and implemented legislation that destroyed the Mexican economy. And in destroying the Mexican economy, Bill Clinton facilitated the increase in illegal immigration. He knew it was going to happen. That's why he passed that other legislation to criminalize the increase in immigration, because he knew that those people were not making a lot of money. That's why they were coming across the border and going to these farms, doing this seasonal work and taking that money back home. And if they really wanted people to stay in the country and keep the money in the country, right? Because if that's, and I would say that's a valid argument. You don't want people making money in this country and taking it somewhere else. I personally don't care. But if that's the argument people are going to make, because we know people are going to make that argument, then why not allow them to go back and forth? Or why not let them be citizens? Let them have citizenship. Grant them citizenship if you want them to stay. If you don't want them to take their tax dollars, their money out of the country, okay, then just make them citizens. But that doesn't make anybody any money. That doesn't make Bill Clinton's friends in the prison industry, in the private prison industrial complex, the money that he promised that he was going to make them. Him and all of their neoliberal friends. And by neoliberal, I mean Democrat and Republican. So he knew, they knew, everybody knew that NAFTA was going to do exactly what it ended up doing, ultimately leading to the increase in illegal immigration, or what they decided to call illegal immigration. What it did was just increase regular old migration, people going to where they need to get the resources they need to take care of their family. That's all that is. And people have been doing that across so-called borders and territories for millennia before that fake imaginary shit was put in the South. Man, get the heck out of here. So then what does Clinton do to respond to the increase? And he relies on the IRA, anti-immigration legislation he signed into law. And he couples that with, what was that, the enhancement to the death penalty legislation and the 94 crime bill. This is why the 94 crime bill, with its 100-to-1 crack versus powdered cocaine disparity, that's why they started with this whole, the immigrants are bringing over drugs. That's where that came from. That's where that narrative started. Because nobody was talking about immigrants being drug mules before that. Not like this. Not like what we have seen over the past 10, 20 years. So this whole thing about, fentanyl, even the Democrats, even what's her name, Kamala Harris, even when she was campaigning, remember what she said about immigration and border policy? We need a strong border policy. I promise to put more troops at the border, more agents at the border, and to focus more on the trafficking of fentanyl. What was different about what Harris said about immigrants trafficking fentanyl than what Trump said about immigrants eating people's pets? What was the difference? One was just garishly awful. It was blatantly racist. But wasn't what Harris said about migrants being connected to fentanyl trafficking, wasn't that racist too? Because wasn't she calling those people a bunch of drug dealers and drug mules too? Yes, she was. Yes, she was, just like Trump did. Y'all are going to continue to give these Democrats excuses and making up bullshit reasons for why they're not as awful fascists as Republicans are. I would have thought that this moment would have been the moment that many more of you would have woken up to the fact that your Democrats, they are the white liberals Dr. King warned us about. They're the ones Malcolm told us to stop being chumps and continuing to vote for. But nope, this apparently is not the moment, because people are still making excuses for them, despite the history that these people have been involved in establishing the very systems the person folks are saying is a fascist are using to do all of the fascist stuff. If the person who comes along and is using the apparatus that exists to do fascist things, I would argue that the apparatus that was created, little bit fascist, that, yeah. And the people who created the apparatus, a little bit fascist, kind of fascist. So let's see if we can get into a little bit more of the details of NAFTA and why it did these things. I love this kind of stuff. I hope y'all do. I hope you're learning some stuff, because I'm learning some stuff and I like to share. So so if I remember correctly, and I have to say that I worked on I worked at a lobbying firm at the time. I actually did try to get into a profession that fit my passion. And I have always loved politics. Like I said, I was in high school watching hearings on C-SPAN when C-SPAN was launched. It was the best thing in the world. So I've always been fascinated by politics and very interested in politics. So I went to college. Political science was my major, and I hated college. I was bored to tears, never finished. I got a job at a lobbying firm, started as a receptionist, moved my way up, worked my way up to project assistant for one of the partners who was the lobbyist who worked on NAFTA. And she was a Republican, and she was a racist piece of shit. But she worked on this thing. So I remember asking, like, why would American businesses want to ship their jobs to other countries? Why would they want to do that to American workers? That doesn't make any sense. And I was told that I didn't know anything about politics. I needed to let the experts handle the legislation. That's what that heifer said to me at a meeting full of everybody on the team at Congressional Country Club. She thought she was impressing some people when she had a meeting at the country club that she belonged to. Oh, everyone come to Congressional Country Club and we'll have lunch and we'll strategize over our NAFTA rollout and blah, blah, blah. So I go take my little black self down there, and I was the only black thing in that joint. And it was felt. I got the looks from, and Congressional Country Club is not that far from here. It's in like Potomac, Maryland, I think. It's not that far from here. So we're not talking about like Manassas or Northeast Maryland, way up 295 or 95 or some shit. No, it's not that far from here at all. Probably less than an hour drive, maybe an hour with traffic. Not that far from here. And clearly, those people did not like the Negro being in their club and not working and not serving them drinks. And we're going over the draft, and I'm reading through it, and I'm looking at these proposals, and I'm like, how is this supposed to work? How is this supposed to benefit people in this country? This doesn't make any sense to me. If all of these companies are saying they are willing to ship their jobs to other countries so they can pay lower wages, what does that do to? And she literally sat in her chair at the head of that table. We were at a table outside having lunch near one of the pools. And I asked my question in a respectful way. I wasn't as snarky then as I am now. But it's shit like that turned me into this. And I said, I don't, why would anybody do this? Why would American businesses do this if they want to keep, because it seems to me like this would hurt American workers. And if the reason they're sending these jobs to countries where they pay people less, then I don't think it's going to help the people in those countries either. And she told me, well, you don't understand politics. So why don't you let the experts and the people who do understand politics and the business community decide on what's best for them? And the look she gave me, if she could have immolated me with a look, she would have. And nobody at the table stood up for me. Not one soul, and that's that kind of thing that has happened more frequently than I would like to remember, but I never forget that shit. I never forget who stood silently while I was abused by somebody else. It's happened way more than people think. It's happened a lot. That's why I can't stand that shit. I hate it. And that's why I do not stand silently when I know somebody is going after somebody unfairly. I don't care if it didn't have shit to do with me. If it's somebody I know, if I know you lying, no, we're not doing that. So, that's a good question. In the chat. Sorry, I got my teleprompter thing going on here, so I'm not really looking where I need to be looking at the chat. Stabist, I guess. I think. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. How long did it take to quit after that? I was very young, and I actually didn't quit after that. I think I stayed on that job for another 2 years after that, and then something else her assistant, also her executive assistant, also a white woman, did to me involving her, that once again nobody stood up for me on, and that's when I quit. But that's another show. So stabilize. Thank you. See, I'm trying. So what happened with NAFTA was actually that it crushed economic growth in Mexico. economic growth in Mexico was slow anyway, because, Mexico it didn't have as much as the infrastructure as the US did. And Mexico didn't have the same size GDP. They didn't have the same, what do you call it, manufacturing infrastructure. So it just didn't have an economy as big as the United States. But the economic growth was also just slow. It just kind of was, because mostly Mexico is more of a rural country than it is urban. That it kind of is. So the average economic growth in Mexico before NAFTA was like 3.5% a year. And it was lower than that after NAFTA. Less than 2% on a per capita basis. Since 2000, NAFTA has done that much damage to the Mexican economy that the per capita basis of growth is less than 2%. That's crazy. Unemployment in Mexico is higher than it was before the treaty signed, higher after than before the treaty signed. And half the labor force has to eke out a living in invented jobs in the informal economy, a figure 10% higher than in the pre-NAFTA years. Meanwhile, jobs in the runaway maquiladora industry that left the United States to profit from free trade and cheap labor commonly pay close to the Mexican minimum wage of US $7 per day, an amount so small in the now open Mexican market as to force people into informal jobs across the border. Mexico, NAFTA rather, imposed a minimum wage of $7 per day for work. And when I first read it, I thought, well, damn, that's close to the U.S. federal minimum wage. But no, the U.S. federal minimum wage is like $7 and some change per hour, which is still garbage. That is garbage, because it's been that low for decades. The minimum wage in the United States has not risen with the cost of living, the level of production, nothing. It's just $7 and some change still. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, damn, it's close to no, this is not. This is $7 per day in Mexico. That's the minimum wage that NAFTA set as the lowest you can pay people. And that is what that big warehouse in Mexico, that big Amazon warehouse, and them people making $7 per day. And if there are some making more, it's not a lot more. So that's why so many Mexicans were forced into the informal economy, because they moved from the urban areas where they were barely surviving with farming to these big urban centers that are now anchored by these big warehouses, these big American and Canadian warehouses, these manufacturing jobs or these warehouse jobs or whatever's. And then they get there and they find out they're making $7 a day. And the very thing they left their communities doing, farming, they have to now cross the border into the United States and get seasonal jobs harvesting food for American markets. And then they take their money and then they go, they sneak back because they have to sneak across the border, because NAFTA does not include any provision for the free migration across borders back and forth of the labor force, just of those 5 very specialized industries. They are the only ones who have a temporary visa, and those visas are temporary. They're not permanent. So of course, the winners in NAFTA is exactly who Bill Clinton intended to win. The large transnational corporations that profit from the abundant and cheap labor, the lack of labor regulations in a lot of these countries that are anywhere close to the labor regulations in the US, and open borders for them. This is the other part of this whole NAFTA and illegal immigration situation. These niggas are talking about, oh, the illegality is them crossing the border. No, the illegality is y'all lying about giving people good paying jobs and growing the economy in Mexico and Canada that's going to benefit all workers. No, the illegality was you tricking people, doing a bait and switch, promising people economic prosperity, promising a significant reduction in the immigration issue, because that was the argument when NAFTA was passed. That was a part of the benefit. This legislation is going to create more workers and a stronger economy in Mexico, and it's going to create better and stronger jobs in the United States. And because there are more jobs in Mexico, there are going to be few people needing to come to this country. That's what they said, knowing damn well they intended the exact opposite. So what they did was they made sure that there were open borders for the multinational corporations, for industrial goods and capital to flow freely back and forth, because the trucks with the car parts, the trucks with the toys and the clothes, all of the Amazon packages that get shipped from that warehouse in, where is that? I think it's in Tijuana, or where it in that's huge. Oh, those things and the money that Amazon makes, that gets across the border just fine. Nobody stops those trucks. Nobody stops any of that from getting across the border. But those people who just left probably 2 shifts at one of those warehouses or factories that now still have to sneak across the border to go to their 3rd seasonal job on some farm at Tyson's Farm, or at what's the Bird's Eye, or whatever the company is that owns all of the frozen vegetable, a massive, huge agricultural industry in industrial farms. That's the word I'm looking for. The industrial, yeah, they go and work for them. How else do you think that lettuce gets in that bag? Oh, you thought that was black jobs? Oh, that's cute. That's the people who got shafted, the Mexican people who got shafted through NAFTA. Yeah. So all kinds of crap, trinkets produced south of the border with no government controls, with wages that are 1/7 or less of people doing the same job just on the other side of the so-called border. Meanwhile, if you've been to Mexico City, Mexico City kind of looks like your typical American big box store kind of fast food as far as you can see. Yeah. And the things that are produced by these multinational corporations, most people cannot afford them in Mexico because the jobs that these people work, come on. Peasant agriculture, people who had been able to eke out some kind of a living farming, now that's been destroyed. That has been destroyed in Mexico with the arrival of agribusiness, of industrial agricultural operations, and the lifting of restrictions on the sale of peasant land. This happened too in Mexico, because at the time, the Mexican president was very friendly with the US president, with the US government, and they welcomed NAFTA because, of course, they and their corporate friends, the Mexican president and their corporate friends, they were going to make some money too. And they didn't give a damn about Mexican workers either. So the Mexican president at the time, I can't remember the person's name, but they eased restrictions on seizing and selling peasant land to these multinational corporations to set up, to build their factories and warehouses. So what peasants, small farmers have needed to do is exactly what I said. They had to move north in greater numbers because they were losing their land. They were losing their ability to make a living. They didn't want to starve to death. So they had to go to where they were told the jobs were. And then they get to the cities and the jobs are paying $7 a day. Before NAFTA, to be clear, before NAFTA, undocumented Mexican immigration came mainly from 4 or 5 Mexican states and a limited number of mostly rural municipalities, which is why before NAFTA was passed, there wasn't like a crisis at the border. That kind of stuff didn't happen. There weren't that many people there weren't that many. After NAFTA, migrants have come from all Mexican states, all municipalities and cities, as well as towns and villages for the reasons I just explained. NAFTA impacted all of Mexico, all of it. A number of formerly vibrant places are ghost towns now. All of the adult population has had to leave to make money, to make a living. And about 1/3 of all Mexican municipalities have lost population during the last decade, some by half or more. The counterpart of this hollowing out of the Mexican countryside is the growth of the Mexican migrant population in the U.S. There are so many people at the southern border because NAFTA still in place. Those multinational, low-paying, slave wage paying multinational corporations like Amazon, the automakers, Ford, Chrysler, Toyota, Jeep. They've all got factories in Mexico. Bunch of other big corporations. I think John Deere has a factory in Mexico. A lot of American and Canadian multinational countries have factories and warehouses and some type of labor operation in Mexico. And those industries have pushed more and more of the Mexican population to the border to seek better jobs. That was created by NAFTA. And the people who signed this into law, Bill Clinton and the Democrats, they knew it. They knew it was going to happen. That's why they did this. They wanted to expand their profits. They wanted to improve their economy. They didn't want to improve the economy. They improved the economy of Mexico. They didn't want to improve the living standards of workers. That was the lie they told workers. But really, NAFTA was all about enriching corporations. And it created this migrant crisis, which in turn causes profits for the private prison industrial complex, because the people who are considered illegal immigrants that were compelled to migrate because of NAFTA, where do they go? They go to jail. Yeah, they leave some people in Mexico, and Mexico is agreeing to that because they realize previous administrations are responsible for this. So Mexico feels responsible for this. So of course they're like, yes, okay, they can stay here because a lot of people are Mexican, but the people who are not, Haitians, Cubans, Venezuelans, and I know that's a caveat, but some of those people, because some of those people are gusanos, some of the Cubans, some of the Venezuelans are gusanos who came here to help the U.S. government topple the governments the revolutionary governments in Venezuela and Nicaragua and Cuba, right? So, but Haitians are fleeing what the U.S. government is doing, and the Canadian government and the governments represented in the core group, which includes the fucking Brazilian. Jesus. So Haitians are fleeing what the imperialists are doing in Haiti, and they get sent to Guantanamo, or threatened to get sent to Guantanamo under Biden. They get sent to prison, and then they get deported from prison. But somebody's got to pay for them while they're in prison, and that's why this migrant crisis was created, because the prison industrial complex, the private prison industrial complex, makes money off of the imprisoned migrants. Okay. So the counterpart of this hollowing out of the Mexican countryside is the growth of the Mexican migrant population in the U.S., much of it undocumented. From a purely regional presence in the West and the Southwest, it has become a truly national phenomenon. States that had barely a handful of Hispanics in 1990 now count a sizable Hispanic population. In Georgia, for example, the Latin origin population went from 1.7% in 1990 to 5.3% in 2000, a 312% increase, due to an inflow of 300,000 persons, overwhelmingly from Mexico. Now, these people are not the folks who were able to get the temporary visas to come to this country and work as an accountant or a pharmacist or, whatever, or a teacher. These are the people who left the Mexican countryside for these big warehouse jobs in the cities, realize they ain't getting paid shit, realize they're going to starve if they don't get another job, realize there are no other jobs in Mexico available. They don't have anywhere else to go but across the border to the States without documentation to get a seasonal job to supplement their income just so they can survive. American media commentators and policy pundits attack the migrants themselves for their presence and greater visibility, but they're not coming here because they want to. They are coming here because U.S. government policy has created conditions in their country that has made it impossible for them to stay in their countries and live. These people are dubbed lawbreakers and accused of taking jobs away from America. They never have those jobs. Those jobs on those industrial farms, those jobs were never for Americans. Though the Dole corporations and Tyson's Foods and a Bird's Eye and PepsiCo and all of these industrial agricultural operations do not have jobs that pay as little as they do because they want to attract Americans, because they know damn well Americans are not going to work for $3 an hour and no benefits. But they know who will. They know they can get desperate people who came to this country without documentation to make a little bit of extra money so they can go home and eat. They know they can get those people to take those jobs. Come on, y'all. This was a coordinated effort by the U.S. government under the Democrats that continued under the Republicans and under Democrats ever since then, and the corporations to collude to exploit Mexicans, not only for cheap labor, but also to create a situation through which the private prison industry can also make money off of the same group of people by criminalizing people responding to the situation that the legislation created. The immigration crisis is a big plot by corporations and the US government to exploit the Mexican people and to use them as this political tool to keep working white folks pissed off at Mexicans. And that shit has worked among some of us. You got some of us calling ICE on people, talking about that they taking American jobs. And these people are not understanding that these jobs were never intended for us. There's no such thing as black jobs. They ain't never intend black folks to have no damn jobs. NAFTA was not created to give black people jobs. NAFTA was not created to improve working conditions for workers in this country or in Mexico. NAFTA was created and passed to make corporations more money off of the exploitation of the labor of a population in another country. That's why NAFTA was created. And your hatred of immigrants keeps NAFTA valid. Nobody has ever paid any attention to NAFTA because everybody's been pissed off about illegal immigrants. You see how that shit works? Do you see how they do this shit? We know kind of instinctually, because we remember dates, right? That these things happened all around the same time. And normally we don't think that there is a coordinated effort because it almost sounds like a conspiracy, doesn't it? And we don't want to be accused of being conspiracy theorists. But here's the thing. A conspiracy is just something that a bunch of people are doing that they are keeping from you. It's just a secret. It's not that it's not true. It's just that we over here are talking about doing some shit to some other people that'll probably affect you, but we're not going to tell you about it. You don't need to know about it. We are planning it over here. We're going to plan it in secret. And you're going to find out about it when it happens to you. That's what a conspiracy is. It's a bunch of people just getting together saying, we're going to do these things. And we're not going to tell anybody. A conspiracy doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means that they're keeping it from you. And that's exactly what is happening, continuing to happen. This is why there is always this psychotic laser focus on illegal immigration. This is why migrant people who are migrating, people who are trying to come across the southern border or whatever, because you notice they don't never talk about people coming across the northern border. They don't talk about people sneaking into the US from Canada. Is it because Canadians don't want to come to the US? Of course they do. Yeah, they're just right across the border. I mean, and shit, it's New York. Who doesn't want to go to New York? And Detroit. Canada is like right across the river from Detroit. You can literally like be in Detroit and look across the river. River is not even that wide, and there's Canada. And it's wild that you have to have a passport. You have to show a passport to get into Canada. I remember a time when you didn't need a passport. You could literally drive across that bridge from Detroit into Canada. That no passport required. Yeah, that was a time when that happened. That time ain't no more. But nobody ever talks about white people, because that's what we're really talking about. Nobody talks about the white people who sneak into the US from any border. They don't talk about the white folks, the European descended folks, the domestics and the nannies and the who overstay their visas and hide out, staying under the radar. ICE is not looking for those people. ICE is not looking for the white illegal immigrants. They exist. They are here. A few of them actually did some videos and were just flat out, I have been in this country illegally for 25 years. A lady literally did a video. It was a white lady. She literally did a video where she said, I am an illegal immigrant. I have overstayed my visa for like 20 years. The migrants, they don't call them migrants, they're refugees. The refugees from Ukraine, them motherfuckers ain't refugees. The bigots, the Nazis from Ukraine. Oh, I know, not everybody's a Nazi. There was I think it was a PBS thing, but they were interviewing one of these people who came from Ukraine that were led into this country. Ain't nobody said anything. No, nobody said. It was like, okay, we're going to take 100,000 Ukrainians. And that was it. That was all. That was it. Just because the US, EU, NATO axis of domination decided to use Ukraine as a proxy to fight and destroy Russia. Well, it hasn't worked out that way. But one of the things they did was to accept without question, without process, without anything, refugees from Ukraine. And I'm just like, have we done that for Congolese? We see what's going on in the Congo. Who has said we need to take 100,000 Congolese refugees? We need to save as many people from while they work this crap out in the Congo. We see the way this government responded to Haitian refugees, because at the same time the media is talking all the time about violent gangs in Haiti. Well, the people fleeing the violence that is propped up by the core group in the U.S. because ain't no gun manufacturing in Haiti. So where are those guns coming from? I'll tell you, USAID. How about that? That's another conversation for another day. But we see what the U.S. government did with Haitian refugees. Chased them down on a horse, with a horse and a whip. Chased them across that border on a horse and a whip, like the old days, like there was chasing down runaway slaves. But the Ukrainians, open arms. So one person was interviewed by, I think it was PBS or some, outlet, and they posted the video, and they're interviewing this lady who's from Ukraine, a refugee from Ukraine, and they're asking her how she feels, and she's clearly uncomfortable because in like the middle of her interview, she basically admits that I've never seen this many Black people in my life. And of course, a bunch of fucking Nazis would be uncomfortable being around a bunch of colored people. Motherfucker. This country literally, and they knew that Ukraine has a long history of Nazi sympathizing and collaboration. Ukraine was on the side of the Nazis in World War II. Ukraine carried out massacres in Ukraine for the Nazis in World War II. It was Russia that had to kick Ukraine's ass in World War II before. So when Vladimir Putin said Ukraine needs to be denazified, he wasn't lying. And that's not me saying that because I love myself some Putin, like some people want to say, well, your regard for the Russian, I don't have any regard for any government that's not revolutionary. I'm just not afraid to tell the goddamn truth. The truth is uncomfortable for a lot of liberals where Ukraine is concerned, because these people don't want to admit that the United States willingly and knowingly chose an entity that has a long history and connection with Nazism, that has Nazis all throughout the country. These people call themselves Nazis. They love Nazis. And they want to kill as many Russians as they can as a revenge for World War II. So you have people, Black folks, talking about how they support the ICE raids and they support Trump and his immigration policy. And these immigrants are taking our jobs. Man, ain't nobody taking your job. But they aren't saying anything about the European immigrants. Those are the ones who actually probably are taking your job. That's the really messed up thing. The immigrants that you should be mad at, these Ukrainians, these relatives of Nazis, They probably are taking your job. You should be mad at them. Now, I am not for deporting anybody because I don't believe in borders. I don't believe in immigration policy. I absolutely believe in open borders because white supremacists created borders. People didn't have imaginary borders. You were traveling into the territory of a people, and you owed that people respect to acknowledge their presence in that territory on which they occupy. You owe that people respect to let them know you're in that you're in their territory and that you're there with goodwill and good intent. That's what we did. We engaged in travel across regions occupied by different people for trade and migration and all of that. Do no border stuff. There wasn't a sign, you are now entering the territory of the so-and-so people. No, you knew they were there. You minded your business, you respected the land, and you respected the people that you came across on your journeys. That's what you did. That's how people survived before white people came along and decided to colonize the damn world and encase everything in a border that they would go to war with other people if they crossed it. That's again another one of those ridiculous things that seem innocuous, the establishment of a border. That really is actually not. It is a weapon of white supremacist settler colonial domination because that border identifies who a land belongs to, what person, what entity that land belongs to. So now if you want to enter that land, you have to deal directly with that entity in order to have permission to. So then they have to set up a whole infrastructure of stuff to carry out that deal, right? So then the person who has established the borders can decide the conditions under which they want people to enter. Do you see how borders are not just an innocuous little thing that, oh, it just happens? No, a border is a tool of white dominance. I hate saying white supremacy. I don't like that word. It's borders are a tool of white domination ideology. That's it. It's like, I have conquered this. I own this. And they draw a border around the thing that they own. Now it's theirs and they can decide what to do with it. And in deciding what to do with it, they profit off of it. They make money off of it. That's why borders are a problem. Okay. So of course, politicians, people, the news, white folks, working class and poor white people who shouldn't be pissed off at Chicanos or El Salvadorians or Peruvians or Colombians or Haitians who come to this. You shouldn't be, but shouldn't be pissed at these people because they're not your enemy and they're not taking anything from you. They are trying to get to this country because this country has taken everything from them. And your anger needs to be directed at this government, not the people that this government is hurting. But you got working class, poor working class, and white people pissed off at immigrants because politicians have told them to be pissed off at immigrants. You got working class and poor black folks, and some black folks who think they're intellectuals, but they're dumb as fuck, pissed off at immigrants because the same politicians told them, well, it's the immigrants who are taking your jobs. You blacks could have more jobs if they. Why the hell are you arguing with an oppressed group of people over a job that pays less than a minimum wage with no benefits? Why? And why are you not angry, folks? Black folks who hate immigrants, why are you not angry that any corporation anywhere in this richest country this planet has probably ever seen, why are you not angry that anybody is forced to work for $3 fucking an hour, less than minimum? Why aren't you mad that the minimum wage is still $7 and some change? I just don't understand how people, what do y'all think immigrants are taking from you? Eggs, are expensive not because of immigration, mind you. Eggs are expensive because of an underreported bird flu. We gonna die, y'all. Okay. So apparently, I guess at the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, because of Trump's executive order, and time flies, because of Trump's executive order, information that the CDC would normally post on its website about the transmission of diseases, it's not there anymore. So the COVID transmission and hospitalization rates, I think, have been taken down because it's flu season and COVID is still outside. And now there is this, I don't guess it's new. It's just more. So RSV is going around. So if you have caught like the flu or a cold and that shit ain't going away, you have been feeling like garbage for 2-3 weeks. That's why. Because you probably don't have COVID. What you probably have is some weird psychotic combination of the 3 viruses that are floating around right now simultaneously, sliding up everybody's nasal passages, making you sick, that the CDC is not reporting because of Trump's executive orders. And again, I have to ask folks, if the people at the CDC understand how seriously important their reporting of this information is to the very health of the American public, why the fuck they just do what that man said do? Why? I don't get that. That makes no sense to me. Unless, of course, they're fine with it. And I'm sorry, you can't tell me this now is down to fear. Oh, I have to do what I'm told, or else. You know, there is a bird flu that is affecting fowl populations around the world. I mean, industrial bird industries, industrial poultry processing, the people who do the eggs and the chicken at the, because I know there are vegetarians watching. I don't want to be graphic because I know that is very sensitive for people who are vegetarians for ideological reasons. So I'm trying to respect, my vegetarian friends, because I don't like to gross people out, necessarily, unnecessarily, with stuff that I know is gonna upset them. That's not necessarily. That's not necessary. So I don't want to do it. But the poultry processing centers around the world have had to kill enormous segments of their stock, of their poultry, of the chickens, the ducks, the geese, because there is a bird flu going around. That's why your eggs are expensive, not because of tariffs, not because of Trump's, not directly because of an executive order on eggs. No, your egg prices are higher and unaffordable because there is a bird flu that is affecting the production of eggs. And the CDC has taken down the pages that would provide that information. So you're not getting information about COVID, RSV, tuberculosis, which is also on the rise now. Tuberculosis. The CDC is not reporting these things because they're complying with Trump's executive order. But if you are providing critical information on health issues to the public, then what you're doing is not political. This is not a political situation anymore. This is a matter of public health. And the response should have been, I would think, the response from the CDC, or CDC rather, not those niggas. The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, should have been, no, we're not going to take these pages down because this affects people's health. This is life and death. We will not take these pages down. Now, they might have eventually been taken down, but at least we could have said they resisted. But they didn't. That stuff just disappeared. And you didn't know. You didn't know. So that's why your eggs are $7, $8 a dozen. Not because of anything else other than Donald Trump and people within these agencies obeying Donald Trump, despite what it might mean for the public not to have the information that they would otherwise provide. Do you see what I'm? So all of this is happening now. And people are not making the connections because we were indoctrinated not to make we were indoctrinated not to know that these things were connected. This is why all of the focus is on the criminality of the people, because you have to be made afraid of these people in order to keep believing that the government needs to do something about these people to keep us safe. And you never ask, why every year are there more people at the border? Why is this still an issue? There are more Border Patrol agents. There is the military now. There's barbed wire on the fence. There are shooting people. They're chasing people down with whips on horses. How are so many people at the border? Because policies like NAFTA are still in place, and they are still doing the very same thing that they were designed to do. So all of this talking about the criminality of immigrants is just victim blaming, and it's propaganda, and it is indoctrination to get you to focus on these people being a problem so that you can demand that the government address this problem that you've been made to believe exists and affects you, when really the government created the problem. And the only thing they need from you is to vote for them to keep doing this. The people who are really responsible for this are the authorities who embraced free markets. Whenever anybody says to you something, I'm a free market capital, run. They're a fucking thief. They're a plantation owner. They're a slave owner. They are the kind of people who implement policies like NAFTA because they know they are going to be able to exploit people's labor for the most amount of money and give those people practically nothing. And because people's economic situations are so dire as it is, they know that people have little to no choice but to take their shitty offer of $3 a day or $7 a day and then get arrested trying to cross the border, trying to get a seasonal job on somebody else's farm. Government officials on both sides promoted and signed NAFTA were either guilty of short-sightedness, which I don't believe, or swallowing the ideological pap purveyed by some academic economists and the lobbyists and the politicians who were talking about the magic of the markets, the invisible hand of the market correcting itself when little bumps that's bullshit. The market is not a sentient being. The market does not correct itself. All of the neoliberal economic terminology came from this era too. The open trade, open markets, free markets. It really played up into this. Yeah, Reagan started saying some of this kind of stuff. A little bit of it came from Nixon with the Chicago Boys and the economic package known as the BRIC that was used on Chile. We're gonna talk about that another day. Oh my God, that was demonic. But this idea of trickle down wealth and the invisible hand of the market correcting itself and protecting investors from market shocks. All of that stuff didn't have anything to do with your and my economic well-being. When they talked about trickle-down wealth, when Reagan was talking about trickle-down economics, when Clinton was talking about open trade being beneficial to Mexico and the US and Canada, they weren't talking about us. They were talking about them. They were talking about the capitalists. They were talking about the CEOs, the boards of directors. They were talking about the rich. Trickle down is for the rich, only it's in reverse. Their wealth trickles up from our pockets to theirs, from our paychecks to their pockets. So as time has progressed, what happened is the low wages that were allowed for in NAFTA, well, corporations, they actually started paying people even less than the $7 a day that was a provision of NAFTA on both sides of the border. This is why NAFTA is also the reason why wages in the US have not kept up with productivity and the cost of living. Because NAFTA literally has a provision in it that says that you can pay people this little. But if you want to pay them less, that's okay too. Because of open trade, free markets, the market decides what wage is fair. The market, not you, not politicians, who we do not control. They don't do what we say because we don't have enough money to do what they say, to do what we say. And we don't have enough money to do for them to do what we say, because they pass legislation for the corporations to make sure we never have enough money to ever make them do what we say. Oh my God, do you see how this works? So in Mexico and in the US, wages got even lower because of NAFTA. Bypassing environmental controls, bypassing labor protection laws, legislations in Mexico and in the US, obviously, they're like, yeah, fuck those environmental laws. Fuck those labor. Toyota, you want to build your factory in Mexico? The American Toyota corporation wants to build a factory in Mexico. Some people have environmental concerns. We don't care. Yeah, build a factory. We don't care. Fuck those people. And if those environmental activists in Mexico who oppose the building of such an infrastructure, factory, warehouse, whatever, if there are environmental groups or activists actively, they disappear. Haven't you noticed over the past few years, the environmental activists in a lot of countries disappear? They're murdered, or they're never seen again. It's because they oppose these kinds of projects. And that's too much money for these corporations to let a few little old activists screaming about some environment get in their way. So they will happily kill people to get rid of the opposition to them making massive amounts of money exploiting the labor base of an entire country. Oh my gosh. And this is true on both sides of the border. Now, you don't have environmental activists like disappearing and dying in the United States, but somebody just said it. Aren't they though? Isn't that happening though? Ooh, who has paid the price for NAFTA? Who has paid the price for Slick Willie's NAFTA? We just explained who paid the price. Everybody, all of us, workers in Mexico, workers in the global South, migrants and refugees fleeing instability and violence in their countries created by U.S. imperialism, U.S. workers whose wages have been artificially and intentionally suppressed because of the ease with which NAFTA allows corporations to suppress wages. Mexicans have, I don't know how Mexican people in the I don't know how they don't just hate the fuck out of us. Because I'm sitting here looking at, people saying crazy stuff about Trump's executive order causing airline crashes. And I'm pissed off at people in America over that. How in the world are Mexicans not pissed off at all of us for allowing this shit to happen and not knowing it happened? Not realizing that it's all connected. And then we are also going along with demonizing them as a bunch of criminals, a bunch of rapists, and a bunch of gang members. Man, this is how I know there is a God, because people who should hate every single person in this country don't. That's how I know it's a God, and it's their God. It ain't the one these people talk about here. It's the God of every oppressed person in the global South and on the continent and everywhere else in the Caribbean. Everybody in the world should hate every person in this country because we have been complicit in this. The one caveat we have is that our complicity was involuntary, because we did not know that all of these things were connected. That is how finely tuned the conspiracy among these politicians of both parties is. One party does the dance of being the bad guy. They're the Republicans. They come out and say the racist things. They say the bigoted things. They say the xenophobic things. They say the evil things about the Chinese virus. They talk about queer people and trans people. They talk about banning trans women from girls' sports. And then the Democrats turn around and say, those are awful and evil things. See, this is why you can't vote for them. I know they make you feel safe, but we can be just as tough on those people as the Republicans are, but we can do it with more compassion. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag rainbow flag. Hashtag pride. And then they turn around and pass legislation like Biden just did. Or going to allow the policy of putting Haitian refugees in Guantanamo. Yeah, Biden, he was confronted about that last year. He was going to send Haitian refugees to Guantanamo. And as far as I know, he never responded. So I don't know if it happened, but it was gonna under Biden. All right. But, Republicans come out and say the evil things about trans and lie about trans, grown men competing in a little girl's baseball league. That's a lie. It's a lie, but they tell the lie because people believe it. And then they do some crazy thing like Trump just did, sign the executive order to ban transgender women from girls' sports. But then Biden last year signed, or was it last year? I think signed the law banning gender affirming medical care for the transgender children of members of the military. Biden signed that. He did that. And you want to sit here and tell me that I'm supposed to be pissed off about some people, some desperate, poor people crossing an imaginary border so they can get a part-time seasonal job picking some fucking broccoli? I'm supposed to be mad at them? No, I'm not mad at them. I am mad at the politicians in the Democratic Party who did this, who set this up. I'm mad at the politicians in the Democratic Party who lied to people saying that this was good for everybody. I'm mad at the people in the Democratic Party who colluded with the Republicans to do this. I'm mad at the Republicans all the time because they're Republicans. And yeah, they're the more obvious evil, but like Glenn Ford always said, Democrats are the more effective evil. They are. Because they do the same evil thing, but they convince you that they are not as evil as the Republicans, even though their legislative track record proves that they are. So, what does that mean for us? It means that we need to pay a lot more attention to what the Democrats are actually doing. Stop listening to what these people say and look at how they vote on legislation that does impact people's lives. And I mean, like, literally bombing people, fomenting coups, interfering in elections in other people's countries. And yeah, suppressing and destroying wages for workers in other countries so American multinational corporations can make enormous amounts of money because they've kind of hit a limit on the people they can exploit in this country. They can't exploit us with wages that low, so they go to other countries to exploit other people's workers that way. No, we should be angry at the corporations. We should be angry at the politicians that are controlled by the corporations. We should be angry at the system. We should be, you know what I'm about to say, we should be organized against this system. We cannot mistake this moment for we need to stop Trump. No, motherfucker, you need to destroy this system. Trump could not exist without policies that were put in place by Bill Clinton and that have never been challenged by any Democrat that said all this time they care about the American worker, but never did a damn thing about the policy that came from their party that destroyed what economic gains that were small, but that did destroy the economic gains of American workers and of workers in other countries. You need to be in an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist, preferably Pan-African, preferably socialist organization. I think it should be BAP if you're African. It should be the BAP Solidarity Network if you are not African. But there are other organizations out there. You must get organized. It is in organization that you learn these things, how these things are connected, why they're kept from you, how they're kept from you. And in learning those things, you learn how to fight. So that is what I do. That's why I do what I do. That's why I do this. So that we know what it is we are fighting against, really understand what we are fighting against and who we are fighting against, so that we can be clear on who is on our side and who is not. And so that we can be clear who our enemies really are. And understand that some of them are people who are closer to us than we want to admit. That's Luke Mon Nation for this Friday. Ooh, it's been 3 hours. Wow. I think, yeah. I was feeling kind of energetic today. I'm going to regret this tomorrow because I have 3 meetings. 2 of them are in person. We'll see how that goes. But Thanks so much for watching, y'all. Absolutely support my work on Patreon, please. I'm trying to, not have to work a real job for a little while at least. So please support my work on Patreon, patreon.com/LuqManNation, LuqMannation. Yes, tomorrow I'm going to send a history rewind to Kamau to put it up on the Black Liberation Media Patreon. Absolutely subscribe to Black Liberation Media if you are watching, and if you have not subscribed, share this with your friends, share this with people that you really despise, because they need to learn the truth too. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next week. A luta continua. The struggle continues, but I promise, if we keep fighting, Victoria acerta. Victory is certain, and I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe that was true. All right, peace.